Mizmor LaDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar. Binot eshe yarbitzeni al memenuchot yanachaleni. Nafshi yishovev. Yanacheni v'magle tzedek l'ma'an shemo. Gam ki relech begitz al mavet. Lo irara ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha hemayin achamoni. Ta'aruch lefanai shulchan neged tzorirai. Dishanta vashemen roshi kosir vaya. Ach tov chesed yirdifuni koyamei chayai. V'shaveti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. Friends, I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. In these moments when our hearts are breaking, when all we are looking for is some source of comfort, we often turn to the psalmist, and so I invite you, if you wish, to recite these words with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us as we remember Simone Gross. To you, Ricky, to your children, to Kelsey, Kevin, Brandon, and also to Paige, to her brother and sister-in-law, Abe and Teresa, and her brothers-in-law and sisters-in-law, Michael and Jill, Marcy and Glenn, to her mother-in-law, Sidel, and also to Carrie, to her granddaughter, Esty, to all the members of the family, and to so many dear and cherished friends, those of you who are able to join us in person today, and those of you who are with us through live stream. We've gathered here today with hearts broken to celebrate and to remember the life of your beloved Simone. In 1969, the Swiss-American psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote in her book On Death and Dying about the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And while we all know the stages of grief and the process of grieving is not limited to these 5 suggested stages, I imagine some of you, perhaps all of you, like me, are struggling with that final stage of grief, known as acceptance. And I suspect these past several weeks, and especially these past few days, you've been asking the unanswerable questions. How did this happen? How can I accept this? I know that all of us will wrestle with these 2 questions for a very, very long time. And I know that as the coming weeks and months and years unfold, all of us will be present, both physically and emotionally, for Ricky and Simone's children, and for her entire family as they wrestle with these unanswerable asks. How did this happen? How can I accept this? For today, in this moment of shock and grief, I want to suggest that we look towards the questions that we can answer. Questions like, how much did Simone care about us? How great was her love for Ricky, for Kelsey and Paige, for Kevin, and for Brandon? How full was Simone's heart for sweet baby Esty? And how did Simone Gross make our lives and this world more meaningful and more beautiful? Abe, when we spoke yesterday, you referred to your little sister as, I'm quoting you, the miracle baby. You shared that Simone was born here in Cleveland on May 3rd, 1960 at Mount Sinai Hospital. And while she was a miracle, Abe, I hope you see that you and your sister were true miracles. Your parents, Merrick and Runya Moss of blessed memory, or as they were known here, Mark and Rena, your parents were survivors. During World War II, your mother miraculously survived 2 concentration camps, and your father, a soldier in the Polish army, was captured and survived the Gulag system in the Soviet Union. Following the war, the combination of both facts and fate brought both of them to the Isle of Cyprus, where Merrick and Runya met in a displaced persons camp. They married. They immigrated to Israel in 1947, 1 year before Israel gained her statehood. And then just a couple of years later, Abe, you entered into the world. A miracle indeed. As we sat together yesterday, you recalled that you and your parents left Israel and moved to Cleveland in 1955. And after several miscarriages, your parents were resigned to the fact that they would not be able to have any more children. But Abe, when you were 9.5 years young, your sister, the miracle baby, she entered into your world, your parents' world, and then completed this beautiful Moss family portrait. In her toddler years, Abe, you grew into the role of what we'll call the built-in babysitter. On the weekends when your parents would go out with their friends, their fellow greeners, it was you, Abe, who looked after little Simone. And Abe, although it's almost impossible for me to believe, you described young Simone as the shyest little girl. So painfully shy that when people came over to your parents' home, Simone would hide. And if she was forced to come out and say hello, she could not bring herself to talking to them. The most outgoing, outspoken person many of us knew started off as the quietest, even most introverted youngster. Abe, you grew up, went off to school, and eventually moved to Corpus Christi when Simone was still young. But as she approached her teen years, the visits from Cleveland to Texas became more frequent and more special. You finally recall her coming to visit you in Corpus Christi as a teenager. Sometimes she'd be there and meet up with a favorite cousin. Always, every time, Simone was out enjoying the beach and the sun. And there was the one time she came to visit you in the middle of a hurricane. But whether it was sunny or stormy skies, Abe, these visits were always wonderful times. The love was always there. And as your baby sister began to catch up to you in age, narrowing that gap, this deep friendship and respect you felt for one another, broadened and continued to grow. You and Simone came to understand that you had quite a bit in common. Your deep love of family. You described to me a daughter who was a loving and respectful person to her parents. You said she was close with her mom and she was a daddy's little girl. You shared that when Simone was born, your father, who at times sometimes could have a hard shell, when Simone came into the world, he softened. She brought that to him. She had that effect on her dad and many people. You also shared other qualities. You told me you both were very stubborn. You both had this love of cars. And Simone's gratitude never diminished when you gave her your Mazda RX-7. She loved that little car. In recent years, when you and Simone would speak on the phone, she never would hang up without saying to you, "I love you." Your sister grew up in Cleveland Heights on Cedarbrook Road. And before and after Cedarbrook Road, the family moved to Beechwood. She finished high school, that is her 11th and 12th grade school years at Beechwood High, where she was always very interested and involved in the art classes. Now, around that same time that Simone was just starting off at Beechwood, young Ricky Gross, he and his family moved from South Euclid to Beechwood, and he was a senior at Beechwood High School at the exact same time when Simone was a junior. And through those hallowed hallways, the two never met. Following Simone's high school graduation, she matriculated to The Ohio State University, where she began her studies in dental hygiene. And Ricky, it wasn't until you were in your sophomore year at OSU and you were in your friend's room studying organic chemistry. Your buddy mentioned to you that a young lady was going to be stopping by, and he made a point of telling you that he really liked this girl. Moments later, Simone walked into the room where you and your friend were studying, and while you, Ricky, were immediately smitten, you were really unable to chat that much with her or even ask her out because your friend had already declared how he felt about her. And Simone would later admit that when she walked into the room and saw you and the friend, she was much more interested in getting to know you instead of this other young man. Well, months later, at the beginning of the next school year, in your junior and sophomore years, you and Simone ran into each other at a party. You told me you left the party that night together, and you took a stroll through the rain. And so, that's how it started. This courtship began. And about 3 months into the courtship, you recall the two of you were sitting at that enormous McDonald's at the Student Union. And there, sitting together over a burger and fries, Simone's favorite food, of course, French fries, you looked at her and you said, "I think I'm going to marry you." And Simone said, "Yeah, I think so." More years in Columbus flew by, and Ricky, you went into dental school as Simone began her career as a dental hygienist. On September 4th, 1983, you were married at Fairmount Temple with Rabbi Arthur Lilieveld officiating. I'm not sure how much you remember from that day, from that ceremony, but I'm going to remind you that as you and Simone prepared to drink from the cup of wine the second time, the words of the Sheva Brachot, the 7 wedding blessings, were recited. In these blessings, the bride and groom are referred to by this phrase known as Reim Ahuvim. Literally translated, it means loving partners. We can't say that about every couple, but you had a very special partnership in a multitude of ways, and this is what you were throughout 38 years of your married life. Reim Ahuvim, loving partners. Together, you attended art shows. Maybe at first she schlepped you along, but you grew to love it. Together you explored and searched for great artwork, the perfect piece for your home. She liked originals, and that may have cost you a little bit more. With Simone, though, these art excursions were always fun, always something the two of you looked forward to doing together. And together, you and Simone were avid Cleveland sports fans, especially when it came to the Browns. You enjoyed your Browns season tickets, especially back in the 80s with Bernie Kosar at the helm. And you continued to cheer for your team together through some of the more challenging times as well. You took up tennis together, and Simone, with that competitive nature, she actually became quite good on the court. And as a trade-off, she recently started playing golf with you at your new home away from home in Delray. Simone didn't really have the same passion for the golf as do you, but she enjoyed riding alongside you in the cart, and she'd always make you park the cart at each hole so that it was facing the sun. How Simone loved her sunshine. Together, you traveled throughout the United States and the Bahamas and to France and Italy and to Israel. Israel, the land that held such a special place in Simone's heart. She was proud to call herself a Zionist, 100%. And she did not hesitate to express her frustration and disappointment for American Jews who were apathetic towards Israel. Israel's safety and survival was deeply important to Simone, as was her Judaism and upholding the traditions of our people. This was deeply important to her. Together, you and Simone enjoyed dining out, and you loved it when it was especially with your friends. And you and Simone, I know you can see everyone, you cannot see all who is here and all who joins us virtually. But you and Simone were blessed with so many great and amazing friends. And Ricky, as we spoke yesterday, you stressed how these friends over the years have continually enriched your lives. Together, you and your beloved created a family. Kelsey, Kevin, and Brandon. You brought into the world 3 kind, intelligent, talented, creative, and loving children. And the joy, the pride, and the nachas that the 2 of you gleaned from your beautiful family is absolutely immeasurable. Now, while she was a hygienist since 1981, the 2 of you did not start working side by side until 1991, and you continue to do so until the present. And together you built an excellent and respected dental practice. And here, in another way, we see an example of how you were, Re'im Ahuvim, these loving partners. And Ricky, you know better than anyone that Simone had these circles of friends, wide-ranging and diverse circles of friends. In the earlier years, there were the playgroup friends, and then the dance parent friends. And Simone had her Maj friends and her tennis friends and her Playhouse Square friends. And then there were the walking group friends and the Sunday walking group friends and the Susie Orchin walking group friend, which, by the way, was almost a daily activity, a walk and talk for Simone and Susie. Very special time for 2 very special sisters. And Susie, I know these past several weeks, as difficult as they were for the family, Ricky shared with me that you were his right hand and that he and the children have such love, respect, and gratitude for you. Simone made all of her friends feel special. As one of her friends shared with me, I'm quoting this friend, she wrote, "Simone was such a lady. She never went to visit anyone without a gift for the hostess, whether it was a pretty set of hand towels or a plant. She never came empty-handed." With all of her friends, and those of you who really know that you were among her best friends, there were also the other friends, those of us who ran into Simone at a wedding, or at the mall, or at the dentist office. Those of us who ran into her, and when we saw her, even though we may have suspected we weren't in her inner circle of closest friends, Simone made us feel like we were a best friend. That's how she was. She made us feel that she was interested in our lives, the lives of our children, and she just made us feel good. But with all of those friends, Ricky, you were her best friend, and you told me that she was your best friend. As one friend shared with me, she wrote, Simone recently told her that you are her angel. She said, "Ricky is my angel." Friends, we can only imagine how difficult it would be for anybody in the family at this point to be able to stand and speak. And so Ricky's asked me to share some words, a love letter that he wrote to Simone just yesterday. "My beautiful Simone, We've known each other for over 41 years. I don't know life without you. We built something great together, you and me. 3 amazing kids, good people and accomplished. 1 gorgeous granddaughter, a thriving dental practice, and a large number of wonderful friends. We've had a great life together, and I am grateful for every second. In what seems like the blink of an eye, our lives have drastically changed. I don't get to wake up in the morning and look at your beautiful face or feel the warmth of your morning kiss. There are so many things I'm going to miss, but the biggest thing is your smile, the most beautiful smile I've ever seen. I've many photos and memories, but we know it's not the same. You stayed positive and strong throughout this ordeal, always asking me how I was doing, always loving, always caring. I don't know how to live without you, but I will figure it out for you. I promised you I would take care of our children, and I will do so in your honor. I will miss you forever and hope one day we will meet again. All my love, your Ricky. Ricky and her children knew a wife and a mom who was always the glue that kept everything and everyone together. As her daughter-in-law Paige expressed to me, she said that Simone was like the sun in our solar system and we were like all those little planets and stars within that system. In the best way, Paige goes on to say, she kept things in order. Kelsey, you knew a mom, a beautiful and loving mom, who was strong-willed, at times relentless, but determined. You saw a mom who, when faced with a task or a challenge, always rose up to meet that challenge. And Brandon, you said of your mom, not just for yourself, but for your brother and sister, that she cared so deeply. If there was one thing you and your brother and sister knew, is that your mom cared so much for her children. There wasn't anything she wouldn't do for you. And Kevin, you're the one that's a little bit more like your mom. You're more fierce and fearless in the way she was. You saw a mom who was not shy about taking the lead on things, as she was the one who actually went out on her own and picked out the house that you and Brandon would end up buying. She was very helpful, though. She helped you in designing that home, decorating it, setting it up, all done with great love. Kelsey, Kevin, and Brandon, you knew a mom who was funny and who possessed a sometimes dark but always dry sense of humor. And you knew a mom who was never able to tell a short story. Her stories were lengthy and filled with way too much detail. My kind of gal, actually. Brandon and Kevin and Kelsey and Paige, you knew someone who was so proud of your many accomplishments. And as a new grandmother, she was so happy, over the moon, to become Estee's bubby, or Bubsy. Simone happily and proudly looked after Esty on Tuesdays at Paige and Kelsey's home, and the family enjoyed Esty every Sunday at Simone and Ricky's home for the Browns game and family dinner. And in these last several weeks, Esty would hang with her Bubsy in Simone's bed, the two of them bonding and cuddling and cooing, and all of this in this tiny little person, bringing an enormous smile to Simone's face every second that she and Esty were blessed to share together. Abe and her other siblings all enjoyed special closeness with Simone. Teresa, you shared that whenever you and Abe would visit and Simone and Ricky would welcome you into their home, that your sister-in-law would go above and beyond to make you feel welcome and to introduce you to all of their Cleveland friends and make sure you spend time with their friends. And Michael and Jill, just living down the street, literally a 1-minute walk away from Simone and Ricky. It was not just about the closeness in proximity, but this mirrored the closeness in your hearts. Jill, I know that you and Simone volunteered together for the American Cancer Society Relay for Life. And I'm told, Jill, that you and Simone together were quite religious, observing what I'll call Casino Shabbat at Northfield Park, praying over the slot machines, and following up with dinner at Glen Willow Grill. And Marcy and Glenn, her brother-in-law and sister-in-law in Columbus, the closeness, the visits, the warm family connections, these were all so important to Simone. And she especially loved when all of you would be able to get together, the whole extended family, what we might call the ganze Mishpacha, all the aunts and uncles and the kids. And you'd take these vacations to Atlantis in the Bahamas. Simone loved these trips and loved the time spent with all of you. And these trips provided some of the best and sweetest memories of all. Those of you who knew her were not just knowing a good friend, an amazing wife and mother and sister, but you also were blessed to know Simone the artist. Her oil paintings and pottery and jewelry and needlepoint, just extraordinary. A true artist. She was able to see and to seek out the beauty in the world. She performed tikkun olam each and every day. Tikkun olam is this act of repairing the very broken world that we live in. And through her art and the beauty she created, she helped to repair this world. Friends, today our broken hearts join together. All of you here, some who have traveled great distances. I know her cousin Irv came from Boston today to be with the family. Those of you who are joining us via live stream from all over the United States, her family members who join us today from Canada, England, and Israel. Today, our hearts are united. And today our hearts are with you, Ricky, and with your children, and with your entire family. And so today we join with the sages of our people as we declare these words, Zichrona livracha. We pray that the memory of Simone Gross and the good deeds that she performed here in the land of the living, that these memories will always be our blessing. To this we say, Amen. Friends, as you're able, I would like to invite you to rise for the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, shochen במרומים, המסמנו חנכונה תחת כנפך השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מסעירים. את נשמת יקירנו שהלכה לעולמה, בגן עדן תחיה מנוחתה. אנא ברחמים הסתירך בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ותצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר Amen. O merciful God who dwells on high, who is full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your divine presence among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament. To our dear, sweet Simone, who has gone now to her eternal home, may Simone's soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life. Grant that her memory inspire all of us to noble and consecrated living. And to this we say, Amen. Please be seated. Friends, before our service continues at the Mount Olive Cemetery, let me share just a few brief announcements with you. Anyone wishing to make a contribution in memory of Simone, the family has requested that you consider two options. One is the Gan and Gil preschool at the Temple Tifereth Israel. This is the preschool where Simone's granddaughter, Esty, is a student. And the other option is Camp Wise. Simone went there. Ricky went there. All of their children went there. And we know that either of these two charities, one to help the students at Gan and Gil, and the other to help other students who are not able to afford to attend Camp Wise, perhaps to be able to do that. This would mean a great deal to Simone and to her family. If you do make a contribution, please make sure there's a note or something indicating that this is in memory of Simone Gross, so that these two institutions can properly channel these funds. Following the interment at Mount Olive Cemetery, the family will receive visitors at the home at 7455 Worlington in Solon. I'm told that the gate will be open. When we get back to the house, we will have a very brief service. We will say Kaddish at the cemetery, but also have an opportunity to share in some prayers and the Kaddish back at the house. We'll light the candle, and then we will assist the family as we sit them down for the mourner's meal. On behalf of Ricky and his entire family, we thank all of you for your love and support on this incredibly difficult, sad, and most important day.
those of you going to the cemetery with the family, please step directly to your cars, start your cars, and turn on your headlights and your four-way flashers. You can exit to the rear or the front of the chapel, please. Here, I'll take it. Go with us. Those are plants. I think those will deliver to the house later.
Okay, all right.
I can put them in my car.
All right.
You know. Straight back, right straight ahead of you. We got time. We're all right.